Senate Bill 98 by the Committee on Budget, enacting state government and making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, be related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Yes, down to our last three. Thank you, Madam President. This is our state employment trailer bill. Establishes the Annuitants Health Care Coverage Fund, which is continuously appropriated for the purpose of pre-funding health care coverage for annuitants, including administrative costs. It also revises the definition of pre-funding to include employee as well as employer payments, and to provide that payments may fund the actuarially determined normal costs of post-employment health care benefits. Also prohibits the use of state funds in the Annuitants Health Care Coverage Fund for the payment of benefits until the fund is 100% ratio reached at or July 1st, 2046, whichever is first. I ask for your aye vote.
Okay, we have debate or discussion. Senator Nielsen.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this bill goes rather further than that. One of the greatest abuses by the bureaucracies of state government over the decades has been the retention of positions that should be terminated. That's called salary savings. And a few years ago, well, what this bill does, it ends the requirement or the prohibition or the penalty for agencies to leave vacant positions. If the position has not been filled, I believe for six consecutive months, then they lose that position. So what do the magnificent folks in government do? They just shift positions around. The Sacramento Bee did a study recently of 2010 to 2011. 5,200 employees had been shifted around in position and transferred in more than 3 times, 5,200. Now, those are the positions that should have been taken. There were teeth. There was a penalty for them to do that gaming. You know what? This cost us not millions, but billions of dollars, year after year after year. So we're not going to sanction them in any respect now. And interestingly enough, the conference committee, the budget conference committee, we all voted to retain that penalty. And in the dark of night, somewhere between conference committee and here, yet again something disappeared. That language, the renewal of that sanction, disappeared. My, how do these things happen? This is something that really angers me about the compromise, the corruption of our process. This amendment was never considered by members of the legislature. This amendment was never voted on by members of the legislature. And I thought that's the way the legislative process worked. I not only thought, I know that's the way it works. But I know how so often that process is twisted. Or I would even use the harsh term corrupted. And it's corrupted in this respect, ladies and gentlemen. It's costing the people that we represent millions of dollars for these positions. And when this honorable body a few years ago decided to do something about it, abolishing those positions, well, it was largely ignored, and now it is magically disappearing in the dark of night. And for that reason alone, I would urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Seeing no further debate or discussion, Senator Leno, you may close.
Thank you, colleagues. I agree with Senator Nielsen in that there is a problem within our bureaucracies that allows for gaming of the system. He is accurate in that. There is not a solution to that problem in this bill, but there's also nothing nefarious going on within this bill in that though we will repeal the ability to abolish positions that sit empty for 6 months or more, if there is no funding for those positions, they will not be filled in any way, in any case. But the greater solution to the problem identified will be dealt with through some control language in the budget bill that will convene stakeholders and for the governor to take the lead to finally address this problem. So nothing negative in this bill regarding that phenomenon, but the solution is up ahead and it has been identified. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Bates. No. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. No. Block. Aye. Cannella. No. De Leon. Aye. Fuller. No. Gaines. No. Gaggiani. Aye. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Hueso. Aye. Huff. No. Jackson.
Aye.
Aye. Lara. Aye. Leno. Aye. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nielsen. No. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Aye. Runner. No. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wachowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye.
Please, all right, 26 to 14. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. Colleagues, we have 2 items left, but we are also going to be going into special extraordinary session. If you would keep that in mind, we're going to now take up SB 78 without reference to file. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 78 by the Committee on Budget, an act relating to education finance and making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, this is our local control funding formula trailer bill, and it makes a number of statutory changes reflecting on the historic reform of the state's K through 12 school finance system that we enacted in 2013. It appropriates about $6 billion for LCFF implementation. The bill makes various technical changes. It amends the timelines for alignment of adoption of local education agency budgets and local control and accountability plans, repeals obsolete education code references and sections, and also updates references to the LCFF. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Senator Nielsen.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I am not necessarily arguing for a hard no vote on this, but I would remind all of us that this hurts our charter schools. There's an accountability provision that allows for the revocation of their authority with no opportunity for appeal. Again and again and again, we're taking shots at charters. So arbitrarily, they can be found in violating something. They have no right of appeal of that something. And it funds the charter schools based on demographics of the districts in which they serve rather than the unique student population that they serve. Remember, the charter schools are of most help and assistance to our most disadvantaged youth. Understand that this noble-sounding bill does have some onerous provisions.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Seeing no further debate or discussion, Senator Leno, you may close.
Your aye vote, please.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. Aye. Bates. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. Aye. Block. Aye. Cannella. Aye. De Leon. Aye. Fuller. Aye. Gaines. Aye. Galgiani. Aye. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Hueso. Huff. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Lara. Aye. Leno. Aye. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. Aye. Morrell. Wynn. Aye. Nielsen. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Aye. Runner. Stone. Vidak. Aye. Wachowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye.
Please call the absent members.
Bates. Aye. Hueso. Morel. Aye. Nielsen. Runner. Stone.
Ayes 36, no 0. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. We have one final item before we go into extraordinary session. I know there are people who would like to speak. If you would, I've been asked to ask you to keep your remarks brief so that we can conclude, and there are folks who have flights. So if we could proceed with the final item in the regular session, which is SB 82. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 82 by the Committee on Budget, an act relating to developmental services and making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. Senators, this is our developmental services trailer bill, and let me just preface my comments by saying that we all recognize we have much work yet to be done. That is the reason for the special session, to deal with reimbursement rates and to identify a dedicated revenue source to pay for those reimbursements. This bill deals both with our developmental centers and our regional centers. First off, with regard to the developmental centers, this bill expands on the governor's proposed language relative to the future closure of our state developmental centers by providing for a more collaborative process. Any plan must, of course, be approved by the legislature. It states, for the first time, our legislative intent that savings from the closure of our developmental centers should be used to benefit consumers living in the community so that the funds follow the services needed for those who are in need of them. It also allows for the development of a housing project on the grounds of the Fairview Developmental Center that will provide integrated housing options for persons with developmental disabilities. It will increase the bed cap in the secure treatment program at Porterville's Developmental Center. With regard to our community-based regional centers, it authorizes provider rate increases related to implementing new sick leave requirements. It requires the monitoring of the impact of new overtime regulations on consumers and providers. It addresses disparities in service delivery and also makes changes and clarifications to the several community program models to ensure access and appropriateness of placement and services. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate, brief debate or discussion? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. As has been previously mentioned, we have $14 billion in unanticipated revenue in this budget. And while I support the closing of the state developmental centers, this is not going to occur overnight, and there is not going to be any immediate funding coming from these sources for the benefit of the developmental disabled community for any acute needs in the coming year. It's unfortunate that this budget does not restore, my friends, not one dime from the $1 billion taken from the developmentally disabled community in the last decade, which has had devastating consequences on the deliverance of services for this vulnerable population. I have to say that one of the most compelling hearings that I've witnessed here in the state capitol, sitting on budget sub 3 with the very dedicated senator from Los Angeles and my colleague from Santa Cruz, very dedicated, where we saw members of the developmentally disabled community come to us and stood in lines. The public testimony took an inordinate amount of time with people that struggled with their caregivers to make sure that they appeared before our subcommittee actually begging, actually crying for us to restore the cuts that have devastated their ability to continue to live with some semblance of a quality of life, and making sure that those that have dedicated themselves to taking care of the most vulnerable of our populations, a reasonable living that these folks haven't had a raise in years, yet we will sit in this budget and grant hundreds of millions of dollars in raises and pension contributions to state employees. I have made it a routine over the past 23 years of being an elected official to visit this population, and I can tell you that there are many that cannot breathe on their own, that require respirators. They cannot communicate without sophisticated new electronic means of communication, cannot provide intimate care for themselves, entrusting people with sacrificing their dignity in helping them with their most private of needs. They cannot feed themselves. We have the capacity to prioritize in this budget. One area that I've mentioned in the past and part of the budget prioritizes $500 million for teacher effectiveness grants that I'm told are not even of the highest priority for many California school districts. The cost to restore the 10% that's been taken away to this most vulnerable population that have the difficulty in coming here and even communicating with us is only $270 million. Why can't we give $270 million out of this $500 million, which is basically helping teachers become more effective? I think we have great teachers in the state of California, and I don't see this as a high priority for us when we have so many of these people that live in such unfortunate situations with such significant anxiety because they have no capacity to take care of themselves. There's been, as I mentioned before, hundreds of community organization, nonprofits that have been there to help take care of these people that have just gone out of business. They just don't exist anymore. So this is budget neutral. Let's take $270 million and let's walk away from this institution today feeling good about what we've done here in this aspect and taking care of those that can't take care of themselves, and still giving $230 million for teacher effectiveness grants that the school districts don't even see me clamoring for. It's been told that we're going to have a special session, and the special session in the governor's own words, is to seek new revenue, and he makes it very clear what that new revenue is. And it's this MCO tax. And as you all know, the MCO tax was imposed on those insurance companies that were providing services for Medi-Cal patients. They gave with one hand, and they got back with the other through federal matching grants. Well, the federal government has caught on to this scheme, and they're saying, you're not going to do it anymore. If you're going to have an MCO tax, you're going to pass it on to all of your insurance companies. You're going to pass it on to Kaiser. You're going to pass it on to Aetna. You're going to pass it on to Blue Cross. You're going to pass it on to Blue Shield. So what this is going to do, my friends, is it's going to raise premiums for people that were promised through the Affordable Health Care Act that they'd see their premiums decrease. So I want to make one thing clear, that we have the resources today, as I've mentioned, to take care of the developmental community, developmentally disabled community today. We have the revenue. I can tell you that Republicans oppose this MCO tax. I would not put all your eggs in one basket and depend on this tax to find a 2/3 majority when we have our special session. And I don't want to be hearing the rhetoric that it's you Republicans that won't vote for this tax as the only mechanism to take care of the developmentally disabled community, when in fact I pointed out to you a very easy way in which we can all stand together and do it. Please, please help these people. It's difficult for them to have a voice. I communicate with a young man, Peter, with muscular dystrophy, that communicates through an optical mouse. I think I've communicated that to you, and befriending me, and he's very happy with his quality of life and where he's living. But it's getting more difficult for him to continue to live in this environment without the assurances that the state's going to be there to back him up. Please back up people like Peter. Please back up people that live in your district that need this help in a way in which we're not affecting any other services in the state of California. We can do it today. All we need is the courage and the leadership to say yes. All we need is that courage. Please help the developmentally disabled community.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Bell.
Thank you, Madam President and members. And I speak to you as a member of the Senate, not as a Republican or Democrat. I wanted to only speak on this issue alone during the budget process in order not to, what I say, dilute my message. You know, I only want to speak on this issue because, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we have a final budget that's a crime. It perpetuates and continues the death knell of the Latterman Act. This budget puts people with disabilities at risk. In the fall of this year, the Senate Human Services Committee, with my colleague from La Cañada, Flint Ridge, right? Did I say it right? La Cañada, Flint Ridge? Okay. We had a hearing in Los Angeles, and we heard people talk about the dire emergency relative to the budget for the developmentally disabled. It was heartbreaking to go out and listen to the people talk about the families that were losing their homes, that were losing their services, they're losing their freedom even. So after that meeting, we drafted a letter, and we sent it, signed by many senators, to the governor. I think you remember that. And that was in November. Well, since then, we really haven't had much response to that emergency, other than forming some kind of task force that we don't really know what the task force is doing, until finally this budget came around and we still didn't do anything. The governor rejected our proposal to put some funds into the program for developmentally disabled. And then he created this idea of a special session, but I was noticing yesterday in the budget hearings, the budget committee, they were equivocating. And I think you can talk to the chair. It was an equivocation about any commitment to use any resources from the facilities that we were putting up for sale and using those funds as the Senate requested for the use of funding programs for the developmentally disabled. Now, California has the highest caseload. It has 435 homes that have closed. We are in a crisis. We have not done anything yet. So this special session is an urgent action period of time that if we don't do anything, we're going to have people that are even going to be homeless and possibly lose their lives. A lot of times when we were in government, we make decisions. We make decisions about issues, and we support funding various things. Well, sometimes we have to come to a point where we make decisions that actual lives are threatened. And right now I can say that in the Latterman Act issue right now, this special session, people's lives are threatened. Now, I want to ask you to think about and reflect a little bit. I'm going to share a story with you. Several years ago, I used to be a coach for Special Olympics. I don't know, some of you may have done that. It's something I did. I was kind of an assistant, low-level coach. I assisted this coach. It was a basketball team, and I assisted this coach where he was kind of a tough guy, a teamster. No, he wasn't a teamster. He was a plumber, and his name was Rudy. And my job was to go get water. I had like straws in my pocket and cups because people that were developmentally disabled, they couldn't drink water directly because it hurt their teeth because they had problems with dental care. So they used to drink with the water, with the straws. Well, anyway, Rudy, his approach was to be tough and encourage them and get them going and tell them to try for their best and pushing each member to perform its best. He always told them that he had high expectations for them. And he had all kinds of different types of Special Olympians with different types of disabilities on his team. One young woman, he had developmental disabilities and was in a wheelchair, and she had cerebral palsy. Okay. She was very quiet and really had limited mobility, but she was on the team. So 2 or 3 times during the practice, Rudy would go over to her, give her a basketball, and tell her to shoot for the basket. And Rudy would, she would never succeed. She would barely get the ball up, but he kept trying. Week after week after week, 2 or 3 times he would give her the basketball. She'd try to shoot it. Never making a basket. Now, the last day of the session for the basketball team, it was kind of a special day. It was the last day they had enjoyed it, and he finally gave her a basketball, but he changed his approach of how he wanted to encourage her. He went up to her and he whispered in her ear. He told her something. And she screamed loudly, threw the ball up, and it went through the basket. Everybody cheered, and she yelled, and it was very exciting. So I went over to Rudy, afterwards. All the basketball session was over. They all went over and hugged him, told him they loved him. And I went over and asked him, well, what did you tell her? And he said, I want you to think of somebody that didn't like you and didn't help you. And I want you to show them that you can do it. And Rudy knew that the fight against stigma, the fight for undervaluing people with developmental disabilities, he knew that was one of the biggest challenges. So he told her to fight, and overcoming this part of their lives was part of his job and his mission as a human being and as a coach. And understanding the Latterman Act is difficult, but basically it's about freedom. It's about freedom for people to have choices. It's about freedom for allowing people to make choices about their lives and what kind of enjoyment they should have. And for 280,000 people in California, our job is to support people in those rights. That's what our job is. It's not about having enough money. It's not about saying that the program's not efficient. It's about making sure that people have rights and that we support them as a high priority. It's not about the budget and there being enough money. If you really look at it, this should be something that we should never question whether or not there's enough money. For 15 years, they haven't had any changes in their budget in terms of rates. So our job right now is to keep the faith. We did not succeed with the governor, but I think what I'm doing is I'm whispering in all of your ears, and let's show them we can do it. The Senate, we can do it. Let's make this special session a commitment to do it. Let's try to show the governor that we can do it. Let's have a resolve that we can do it. And Republicans and Democrats alike, we're all senators. We are going to introduce a bill for the 10% and a long-range sustainability. We want you in the special session all to consider the bill and hopefully support it. And we'll take it to the governor. We'll present it on his desk and show him we can do it. Thank you, members, and thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Bell. Senator Monning.